A very wise and, might I say, handsome young man once said, "Your hybrid app rocks, but it could be even better." Hi, I'm Eddy, and this is where I live, in the Netherlands. But as my wife agrees, I mostly live over here, on my GitHub account. What I'd like to talk to you about today is stuff about PhoneGap, who creates plugins, why plugins, plugin support questions, plugins everywhere. So I was wondering how many of you are familiar with PhoneGap? Well, almost the entire room, that's great. And who uses plugins in their project, if you use a project anyway? That's more than half, so that's great. So I can probably go over this quickly. PhoneGap, it wraps your web app as a native app, and in that way you can interact with hardware, native hardware features in a consistent way. The Apache team who created PhoneGap in the first place, or actually it was Nitobi, but it's a long story, but now it's being maintained by Apache. They created all kinds of core plugins because everybody needs a splash screen and vibration and network information, file, device, etc. And a nice website aggregating all these, what I want to say is that it's only a few guys, so there's only so much a guy can do, and others fill in the gaps by creating third-party plugins. And a nice website which aggregates all these plugins is something called PlugRack. And I went there the other day, and it boasts that there are more than 1,400 plugins already being developed by all different authors, almost 1,000 of them.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What does PhoneGap expect? Like, what does it require before creating the native? What do you need so that is it JavaScript?
The native code for a plugin, you mean?
Yeah, but what does PhoneGap expect? Like, you write some code in, is it, and then it translates into the.
Ah, okay, sorry. Yeah, it's web assets. So there's HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS going on, and it isn't really being transpiled to some other language, but it's being wrapped inside your app, and it runs on a web view inside that app. So it's really running in the browser inside the native app. So the trick is to make it look like a native app, but that's the hard part, and that's where plugins come in. So this website shows recent plugins at the left top. You can see that almost every day a new plugin is being added. To the right, you see who writes most of this stuff. I'm the guy in the third spot there. Left lower hand corner, you see plugin updates, and these are the updates of only one day, and there are probably more. So there's a lot going on in that area. And in the right corner below, there's the GitHub stars. It sums all your stars of your Cordova Plugin repositories. And I'm almost at the top. I need 30-ish, so I want to ask all 50 of you to star all my 20 repositories. I'll be on top forever. Thank you very much. You can do this after the presentation, of course. But why would I use these plugins in my project, you may ask? Well, adding native controls, or what you can do with plugins, leads to user satisfaction, as this graph clearly shows. Adding more native controls leads to more user satisfaction, so that's a nice motivation. I have to say, you don't start off with 0%, of course, because your PhoneGap app is awesome to begin with, but it accumulates with time when you add plugins, and once you have about 5.5 plugins, you get at 100% user satisfaction. And if you want to satisfy your users even more, well, knock yourself out, you can add more plugins, just like this app did. And you may know it, it's untapped, it's like Facebook for beer lovers. And I have to admit, I only started using it last week, and I have only one friend, hi Martijn, waving at the camera. I wondered how many plugins does Untapped use, because it's a really great native looking app. So I forced my way into the iOS binary, and I found that this is the entire list of plugins it uses. That's a lot. It's 26 actually, and I think that's awesome. I also saw that Untapped uses one of my precious plugins, social sharing over there. So let's zoom in on that a bit. Social sharing, I think it was my second plugin I created. Calendar was the first one. At the moment it tops at 1,000 views on GitHub a day, so that's kind of a lot. And the flip side of it is that I get about 2 support emails each day for this repository alone. And if you look at the issues page on GitHub, you see that there's about 300 issues. That's about an issue a day. And well, with 20 repositories and maintaining lots of others, that's kind of a burden. So, but I have some experience with answering common questions, so I thought I'd compile a top 3 for you to see what those questions are about. This is supposed to be Picard, but he's a bit in the dark over there. So tip 1 of S3 Chrome blocks. Using development, during development you want to use a web browser, of course, because it's a HTML5 thing in the end. But this won't work. You can't invoke a plugin and expect it to work, because this Toast plugin here calls into native code. And companion apps, well, they don't work as well, because what you do is you live update your application inside the companion app, which only has so much plugins bundled with it, and they usually are the Apache Core Cordova plugins. It doesn't bundle Toast, unfortunately. So these are 3 companion apps. You have the PhoneGap developer app on the left, the Telerik Cordova developer companion app in the middle. And I learned today that the TelerikNEXT companion app actually supports all plugins, because, well, there are no plugins. You can call into native code all you like, so that's a plus for NativeScript there. And on the right there's an Ionic version of this companion app as well. But yeah, Toast isn't bundled in either, so use a device if you want to test plugins in the end, or a nice simulator like Genymotion, or that simulator or emulator thing Jan explained in the previous session in Xcode. And then you'll see the Toast, it's right there in the middle. And 2, be patient. Don't do this on page load. You can't, well, even if you are on a device, you need to wait a bit. You can't just have your document ready fire or your DOM content loaded or whatnot and expect it to work. It won't. You need to wait for the device ready event, which is fired by default, and it's fired after about half a second or so. Depends really on the platform and the device you're using. So if you attach an event listener to the document and say, hey, listen for the device ready event, and then call into the plugin, it will work. And number 1, some silly JavaScript error. And this happens all the time. I get loads of, well, in the end, usually people say, well, there's an issue in your plugin, and there sometimes is. Absolutely, I don't make perfect code. But in the end, I ask them for their project, because we can't work it out by mailing around. So when I look at the project, and there usually is some silly thing like, well, I understand that you want to find a body with double D, but it will lead to an error. And you can expect your JavaScript to work after it encountered that error. So, top tip, I always add this global catch-all thing in all of my projects, which will catch any JavaScript error and it will alert it for you. And if you have that installed, it will pop up the file and the line number where the error is. So, with a few issues today for this repository and all the others, I often feel a bit like this. If you can see it, it's Edward Norton in Fight Club having trouble blinking his eyes. He suffers from insomnia, which actually was the inspiration for creating a plugin. It's called the Insomnia plugin, and it has 2 methods: keep awake and allow sleep again. And this is a nice way into a very cool open source win I had last year. Because yeah, working open source can be tiresome at times, but when stuff like this happens, it makes it worth your while. This is the PhoneGap developer app again. You start a web server on your development machine, and you serve a web folder from your development machine. You connect the app to that web server, and you change the content locally on your development machine, and it refreshes the content in your device. So you're tweaking the CSS, making fonts larger, changing background colors, etc. And you never touch the device. So, problem, it falls asleep. So, I was using that app, and it happened to me. So I thought, there's a plugin for that. So I sent a pull request to the guys of the PhoneGap developer app to add Insomnia to their project. And what happened was they wanted to release a Windows Phone 8 app at that time, and Insomnia didn't support Windows Phone. It only supported iOS and Android. And to be honest, I never ever wrote any code for Windows Phone at the time. So what they did is send me a pull request in return to my repository, and they merged it, and then they were able to merge my Insomnia plugin into their application, and now it's the only third-party plugin featured in the PhoneGap developer app, so that was pretty cool. Really nice to see open source work like this, where you help each other. So. And, well, all-party benefits, and speaking of benefits, then Telerik hired me. Yay. But as all developers know, it's more like this. It's Tom Hanks trying to make things compile and stressing out. So Telerik wanted to help users find high-quality plugins and asked me to help with that noble cause, and I was honored, of course. And what we did was create this GitHub account, the Telerik Verified Plugin Marketplace, where we fork great plugins, or we create our own, and we create demo apps showing off the plugin features. And to help users and developers especially find all these plugins, we created the Verified Plugins Marketplace. And here at plugins.telerik.com there's more than 50 plugins right now. I think it launched today, a year ago, or maybe a bit later, and we're up to 54 already, and all these plugins have been verified, tested on the platforms they're supposed to run on. We fixed bugs if we needed to. We even extended support to additional platforms. We documented it in a consistent way, and we created those demo apps. So one of them is Flashlight, and maybe you've been to the NativeScript extensibility talk this morning, where Flashlight was featured as well, but as a NativeScript thingy. So let's go on with Flashlight a bit and use that as an example to see what we have to offer. If you click a plugin here, you have the details and documentation, and even there the bit you can't read is sample code. And you have instructions on how to install the plugins on the command line interface. And also there's this great little button there, Load in App Builder. If you want to try a demo app, just press that button, and you don't need to fiddle around with creating a starter app, etc. This button will just load the demo app we created for you inside App Builder, and here it is. If you already have an account, it will load it directly, otherwise you can start a 14-day trial version for free. And well, App Builder is the platform to develop cross-platform apps, and this is the, well, might I say, awesome cloud version I use all the time. I don't ever touch the Visual Studio extension. Others love that, others love the Sublime Text thing, but I like this one. So this demo apps, it seems to switch on and off and toggle, and it has some additional features as well, which I recently added. So let's deploy it to our phone. You press the run button and then build, and you pick the platform you want to build for, and then you press the smartly labeled next button here, and you can install it on your phone, which I did. And need to go here. So I saw Rob using this picture, and his demo was excellent, so I hope it works the same for me. Oh boy.
Brian's not following you?
Yeah, How's that possible? He's watching the talk. Hi, Brian. So let's move this a bit to the left and make it full screen. Here we go. So I have a very large amount of demo apps on my phone because I'm creating these things. So, but I was talking about flashlight, and here we go. Let's not rotate anymore. Thank you very much. And here we are. So here's flashlight. There's a flashlight available. Yoo-hoo, there it is. And what I want to say about these demo apps is that every demo app has this information page where it starts out. It tells you in one or two liner what it can do. And the business part is here where you can try it out. And well, it can of course switch on and it can switch off your flashlight. And the funny thing is, in the NativeScript extensibility talk this morning, those guys created exactly the same demo as I did. So I was wondering, did I grab it from the GitHub repository? Because this is JavaScript as well, of course, and you can just plug it into your NativeScript app, and it will work almost the same. Here, if you want to know your audience, sorry, it goes on. Oh, it's 7 seconds and then it's done. So. My 6-year-old son, he used to ask me if I have new demo apps, and this is his favorite. It's because, yeah, he's gonna bother his little brother and stroboscope his eyes out. It's crazy. But there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with Cordova plugins because, well, you have access to the native SDKs, of course. So I like this one as well. It's local notification. Usually for push notifications, you need to set up a server backend, and it's hard work. For Apple, you need to have an APNS profile thingy, and it's a pain. But if your app can decide itself if it wants to schedule something for the future, then you can use the local notification app plugin. So I schedule one. It schedules for 10 seconds from the moment I pressed it, and it will show you push notification at the top. I have sound turned off, otherwise it would play a sound as well. It adds a badge to your app as well, so I really like it. It's just drop it in, and it's a very simple API. No server things going on. Another one, well, we try to make, and all third-party plugin developers try to make their plugins as multi-platform as possible, of course, but there are things that are only possible on one platform, just like Touch ID, which is this thing connected here on the newer iPhones. And I have an iPhone 6, so if I press the Is Touch Available button, then yeah, it is. And of course you won't have this alert in your app, but you'll test for being able to use Touch ID in your app before doing anything with it, so to prevent crashes and stuff. So it presents the native UI, which iOS uses in any other app you're using Touch ID with. And if I scan the wrong finger, it will shake about a bit. It's really cool. Another finger which isn't scanned. And if you forgot your finger and you're afraid that your phone will lock up, then okay, let's enter the passcode then. And it shows you this UI, which is also used in other places in iOS, so that's really cool. And you can also use a fallback to your own login mechanism if you don't want to use the passcode. Then there's this one, where you can press enter password. It will give control back to your JavaScript, and now you can present your own login mechanism. So do this one more time, and now scan my correct finger, and now it says okay. Well, another nice one, this is social sharing again, which Untapped uses as well. Since iOS 8, Apple finally decided to open up extensibility, open up iOS by adding extensions. And before that, you only had about this amount of apps you could share to. It was what Apple decided you could use. But since then, those third-party apps are able to create an extension and be part of this share sheet, as they call it. So you can share to a lot of apps. And this is what I have installed, but it can be anything. So let's do something cool, and I created this for the demo. It's called Tweet a Selfie, because Well, a very common support question I get from the social sharing plugin is, how do I make a picture and then share it? Well, go to GitHub, go to the social sharing demo app, and you get this code. And let's see if we can get all into the picture. Ah, very cool. Oh, I need to be there when it's a selfie, so I'm there a bit. So use this photo and check my latest selfie. I'm awesome. Yeah, that's right. So, shall I say the hashtag and post this to Twitter? And network permitting, the first one to retweet this will get a prize, and it's a t-shirt, because you can also go to the booth, and when you create a selfie there you get a t-shirt, so I thought that was a fair price. Oh my god, someone did already. 5? What? No, 2, okay. John Bristow. Are you entitled to? Give it to, and where's Kevin? You're Kevin, alright, great. Kevin, if the size isn't right, I've arranged that you can swap it for another size. So. Excellent. Oh, one other thing. I hate Facebook, I must say. Here's an example. You can share directly to applications. You don't need to go through the share sheet, but share directly to Facebook if you like. It's in the API. But and in this case, well, everybody's. Can I mute this? Sorry, no problem. In this case, I'm sharing 2 photos actually to Facebook, and since a week or so, Facebook decided to update their app and no longer pre-fill the message anymore. So I was actually trying to share a message here, but it's not, well, filled. Just like on Android, it has always been like this on Android. They want to, what am I gonna do? I did mute everything, but, well, sorry. Maybe that should have been my last demo. So Facebook wants you to be a bit personal and just always type your own message. Apps can't pre-fill it unless you're using the Facebook SDK directly, but this doesn't. If social sharing should use all SDKs directly, then it would be a plugin of 200 megabytes or something. So it just plugs into the standard sharing options your operating system has. But on Android, I've always added this feature where you get this hint. And what I've implemented now on iOS as well is it said, well, we pre-filled a nice message for you, and if you like, you can paste it from the clipboard. So that's what you can do now. It sucks, but it's a workaround. So let's look at another one. Not every plugin has a JavaScript API. Some things are just a drop-in thing, like this privacy screen plugin. You see there are no buttons here, just a whole lot of explanation, but what it does is when you pop it to the background, it will no longer show your app's content, but it will show your app's splash screen. And that's great for applications which have private data, and if you leave your phone lying around or someone is looking with you at your Twitter feed and you're switching like this, then you don't want your account balance, for example, being shown. So, but if you go back into the app, you can see it will pick right up where you left it. So that's a nice little plugin if you need it. And then there's Toast. I've already shown you this a bit in the slides. What it can do is it shows all these little messages which don't block your UI. You can still navigate. You can choose to show it at the top. You can choose to show it at the center. You can choose to have a short message, or you can have a long message, just what you like. And this plugin is available for all 3 major platforms. Another nice thing which Jen also mentioned and uses a lot is beacons. And let me tap Bluetooth here, because those Estimate beacons are Bluetooth powered. So you can listen for those beacons. You can start ranging them. And let's see if some of those will pop up here. Yeah, he's found a beacon. Actually, He's found two, and there's one in a mint color and one in an ice color. And funny thing here is that it measures the distance in meters. So the one at the top is 0.5 meter away and the other is 0.6. So, well, I know where I put one. It's somewhere over there. Yeah, it's like 6 centimeters, so it must be here in my pocket. And another one is getting closer. It should be over here. It's the mint one. It's at 2 centimeters now. I've sticked it. Sorry if I break anything here. Stick it to the bottom. You can just put it anywhere you like. They're great little things. And Jen made a Easter hunt app with it, and it's awesome. Wait for next Easter, of course.
What was major, minor, and RSS?
I have no idea. No, one of those is the unique ID of the beacon, and major, minor. I'm not sure. Maybe Jen knows.
I think it also has to do with the ID of it.
Doesn't really matter, but it bundles the Estimate SDK, and they have excellent documentation, so you can find it there.
What do you play with them tonight?
Another cool one is Action Sheet, where you can use this native UI. I'm showing you this because I want to show you a bit of code afterwards, where I'll dive into the code behind this. You can show a list of options, and if you pick the one at the top, delete it in this case, it will come back with button index 1. And nerds like me probably wonder why isn't that 0 based. That's because the core Apache Dialogues plugin also uses a 1 based index. So pressing the first button in the confirm dialog is 1, and no, the second button is usually 2. So I thought it would be nice to have a consistent API. And the last one of the demo apps I'm going to show you is native transitions, and I've always wanted to do this on the big screen, so you can do something for yourself. I'll just knock myself out. It's like Star Wars, this. Whoa, it's really cool. It's excellent. You can do, you can tweak it what you wanted, but I have two settings here, a high speed and a normal speed. I love the slow motion, I would say. And what's another cool one? A recent addition is fade, but it transitions the state of this page to the next one with a fade effect. But as the other page I'm fading to is exactly the same, you won't see much, except for the button fading. There it goes. This one is cool as well, but let's do it in slow-mo. This one is only available on iOS, by the way. But you can do this with CSS. You can do this with NativeScript, by the way. Just step into the same native function. And the last one I'll show you here is Slide. Slide is used the most, I think, and you can have it overlap views or just push the whole page away. And a recent addition I added for this one is that while it's sliding, it's not sliding the tab bar at the bottom. That's being fixed. So what it actually does, it creates a screenshot of the current state of your application, and it moves that on top of the stack, so you're seeing that. And in the background, it loads the new state of your web view. And once that's done, or nearly done, it will transition away your screenshot and you're seeing the new state of the web view. And in this case, the screenshot is this part. The part below will remain your web view. And that was an addition which was requested by Greg Avola from Untapped, and they used it in their app. Opening Untapped here, and there's my one friend, it's Martijn. He loved this. And as you can see, he doesn't use the slow motion version of Slide, of course, because, that would be silly. It's for demo purposes only, but you can see it sliding here, and you can see that tab bar at the bottom, it's black in this case, is fixed in place. And well, it has 26 plugins installed, and one of the others is Action Sheet, which isn't this. I have to find an Action Sheet. I know there's lots of them here. Here's one. That's the Action Sheet plugin in action in an actual app. So I'm not gonna do anything here because what am I doing anyway? I sure want to remove him as a friend. No, then I don't have any friends anymore. So let's move back to the presentation, shall we? Oh, in case you're wondering how this screen streaming thing works, this is actually QuickTime doing a movie recording. It works excellent on the newer Mac OS. I would love to have my presentation back. I think. Let me start it again, sorry. Okay. There must be a shortcut for this, but well, this is a nice recap already, what you've seen today. And then Telerik hired me, then we're going to App Builder. Oh, okay. Here we left off, sorry. So, let's see how these plugins work. Well, every plugin has this architecture, if you like. Your JavaScript talks to the plugin's JavaScript. And of course, plugin authors are responsible for making your API as simple and consistent as possible over all platforms. And the plugin JavaScript talks to the native code and to, in the end, render the action sheet which is appropriate for the specific platform. So let's break this down a bit. Once device ready has fired, smart man, you can well, call into the native code. In this case, action sheet has a function called show, and it takes an options object, and it has an onSuccess function. And it also has an onError function, by the way, but I'm going to ignore it for this demonstration. The onSuccess function, in return, it only gets a button index, that's 1 or 2 I pressed before. And in this case, I just alerted it to the screen. And the options object is an important thing. It's the data you want to communicate to the native code. And in the past, I sinned a bit with calendar and social sharing, where I was designing an API which took a list of parameters. Well, it quickly became a code smell, and I've yet to redesign social sharing to use an options object. It's really simple, but I just didn't find the time yet. So the support question is sometimes, well, I have this URL and this image and it doesn't work. Oh, sorry, you have to swap those two parameters around. So always use an options object. In this case, I'm passing in a title for my action sheet and a bunch of buttons. Those are the most important things. But recently I added a thing called Android theme as a parameter, where you can give it, well, specifically for Android, you pass it in a theme to be able to skin it the way you like it. For example, to activate material design. And by default, if you're using the older version of the plugin, you get the old look and feel of the Android action sheet, the one in the middle. But if you have a newer function, you can add that new parameter to this object. It won't break the API for any user, so this is future and backward compatible. So what does this plugin JavaScript API look like? It's a pretty simple thing. What you do is you create a new object, in this case action sheet, and you add a show function to the action sheet prototype. It's a function in this case which accepts this options object and an onSuccess and onError handler. The two latter two are optional. And what you then do is do Cordova exec, that's the way to call into the native code, and Cordova handles the rest for you. You pass it in, this is a mandatory order, onSuccess, onError first. Those can be null if you don't want to pass them, but you probably want to. Then action sheet, in this case, the object, and then the method, show, and then a bunch of options. and in the end you assign the object to a global variable. This is what the developers will use. Window the plugins.actionsheet.show or anything you like. So how is this ActionSheet thing wired to the native code? Well, that's where plugin.xml comes in. Plugin.xml has an ID and a version. This ID is, well, you better keep it stable. It will come in handy for users. And there's this JavaScript file you're wiring here, and there's the iOS configuration, and each platform has a block like this. And this is what the plugin JavaScript calls into. The ActionSheet name is wired to this feature named ActionSheet, and calls into that object are then forwarded to these classes, and those can be named anything you want, and those can be placed anywhere you like, but this is where it's wired together. And let's make sure this sheet compiles. So while we're looking at the iOS configuration, let's dive deeper into that. iOS typically has a header file. I called it actionsheet.h. This header file, well, it extends Cordova Plugin, and it has the show method. And there's also the body, the implementation of the interface, which has the same show method. And what we do here is, I won't dive into the details that much, but these slides are available later, is read the options from the parameters passed through the interface, extract the title from the options and the buttons, those are the most important parts, and then render the action sheet. It's one line below here. This is where the action sheet actually is rendered. And what it will do is then pop up that string from the bottom, and then it needs to wait. And well, those plugins are asynchronous, so once a button has been pressed, it needs to be communicated back to the JavaScript. So what you need to do is assign a delegate, and you can set it to yourself. So later on in this same class, there's this method implementing the delegate, and it has, well, actually not very much. It gets an index, the index of the button pressed. So it's very simple, and we pass that back to the success handler of Cordova. And the way you do that is by saying here, plugin result with a command status OK. And if you do OK, it will call the success handler. If you say underscore error, then it would invoke the error handler. So once you know that, then it's pretty simple to use.
What language is this?
This is Objective-C. You might as well use Swift, it doesn't matter. But this was created in the time that Swift wasn't born yet. So let's see what the Android implementation is like. This one is a bit different than the other two. It has the actionsheet.java file, and it has an execute function. That's the only thing you need to implement. So there's no show function or method here. You need to see what the action value is, and it's show in this case. And at the end of this method, you return true to tell Cordova that it was a function call you can handle. You can also return false, and then nothing will happen. So it's a bit odd, but it's just wiring. And this build method is the thing that builds your action sheet on Android. And well, action sheet is an iOS thing, so it was just a matter of looking what would be the thing on Android looking most like an action sheet on iOS. And well, it ended up with, what's this, an alert dialog. And you can skin it and everything, so this is a great little thing. And this alert dialog as well, once it's rendered, you need to pass the index back to JavaScript. So on every button you set a click listener, and again you say plugin result is OK, and you pass back the index. And well, this last parameter here is quite interesting. In this case, like I said, we're only passing back a number, but you can pass back anything. This method is overloaded by lots of other type structures. You can pass back, for example, a JSON array, so anything you like. In this case, I only needed the number, and your application will know which button was which index and go from there. A Windows Phone, this is C#. Well, it was kind of scary in the beginning, and what I found was that on Windows Phone you don't have too much to choose from, because Microsoft didn't expose all the APIs you'd like, and there's also a plugin called SSL Certificate Pinner I made, and I was never able to make a Windows Phone version because Microsoft thought it wasn't necessary to expose ways to inspect a certificate, an SSL certificate, via code. But since Windows 8.1 you can, there is an API for that, so now you can make a plugin as well. But for Windows Phone I also found something that looked pretty nice. Or should I say I didn't find it, so I created kind of my own new UI. What you do here is you create a class called actionsheet.cs and you implement a method called show, and that's kind of like iOS. And you create your own thing which looks like an action sheet. I have a pop-up with all kinds of structures inside, and at the end it will render a title and the buttons. And here again you attach a click listener and you implement this button click listener function in that class later on, and it gets back a tab index in this case, which is also 1 for the first button, and you say plugin result status OK, and it has a very similar way, a structure like the other platforms. And well, when all is ready, you should have a folder structure like this. From the top to bottom you have your native code in the source folder. There's your JavaScript API below that, and your plugin XML to wire everything together, and a README file. And well, if you want to publish this on GitHub, then make sure you put some effort in that README, because that's the thing users will rely on to be nice to read and know how to use your plugin. And when you're happy, go ahead and push it out there. Do it, set it on GitHub and make others happy. So let's go back to the plugins marketplace and wrap things up a bit. You've seen a few cool things that plugins can do, and you know where to go to try them yourself. You can go, of course, to PlugRack and browse through all those 1400. If they're not here, you're welcome to use them from here. You can, if you're using App Builder, you can install demo apps with one click, and well, I think you'll like it. And if you want us to review a plugin you found somewhere on the internet and you think it's a nice addition to our marketplace, then please let us know. And if you want to take a stab at creating a plugin yourself because you got inspired by all this nice code, I'm sure you do, well, let us know as well. But be prepared for loads of karma and a few sleepless nights. Thank you very much and take care.